Headstock, neck, bad headstock break. Owned by a local singer-songwriter, Beth Weishville. This Alvarez has been her mainstay guitar for many years. I've heard her perform many wonderful songs with this guitar. The challenge is going to be to glue this up and clamp it so that I get a very, very flat joint up here on the top, because on this particular Alvarez, there's a very, very thin veneer wood faceplate on the face of the peg head instead of an actual chunk of wood, which means that if there's nothing there to sand to help things get blended in. So onward to putting this guitar back together. Okay, so I glued the headstock back to the neck. I've got the clamping caul molded to the back of the neck, holding it in position here, and I've got a stiff piece of acrylic holding it in place on the front of the neck. I also removed the nut so that I'd have some extra room to maneuver and not have this thing getting in the way of the clamps. So we'll glue it back on once we get the guitar back together. So now it's just a waiting game. We let it sit for 24 hours, don't disturb it, and we'll see how it looks when we pull all the clamps off. Okay, we're almost finished with this headstock repair. It's been glued back to the neck. A finish has been applied to blend all the repair work with the neck, and the gaps from the crack have been filled on this faceplate. You'll recall that the faceplate itself is really on this guitar just a very thin piece of rosewood veneer on some cardboard backing, so I wasn't able to do any sanding. So as you'll see in the photos in a little bit, all of this repair was done without any heavy sanding to blend. The final step before reassembly was to provide a little extra reinforcement to this joint. So what I did was I took a piece of 1/8 inch very, very stiff carbon fiber rod and took a long drill and drilled through the backside of the first string and the sixth string tuner holes right through the joint. And that is very similar to putting a pin in a bone that needs extra reinforcement when it's knitting on our bodies. This is the final phase of this repair before putting a polish on and getting the tuners back on. This actually takes longer than the physical action of gluing the headstock to the neck and pinning it with the carbon fiber, because the finish needs to be sprayed on and needs to be blended, tinted to match the rest of the neck, and then you got to let it sit for a couple of days to harden before you can start wet sanding it to get it all smooth and uniform, which is what I'm doing now. So I'm going to keep after this, and then we polish it up, and pretty soon this guitar will be back on stage behind a microphone. Nice to be able to hear this guitar again. I'd heard it performed with many times by its owner before it arrived in my shop a few weeks ago with the headstock completely blown off the neck. So it's been a real pleasure bringing this guitar back to life. Hope you enjoyed this video on how to replace a headstock broken off back to its neck, putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. And as always, keep on picking.